One, Elon Musk is public enemy number 2. Donald Trump, public enemy 1. Who, then, is public enemy number 3? A discussion with our lunch break panel. 2, is Donald Trump old? Is Joe Biden elderly? What is middle-aged? How do we define old? Physical capability, looks, mental acuity? What is elderly? 3, Chef Andrew Gruel is taking on big food. Can he help us here? Eat more protein, take in less calories? Can he help America be healthy again? It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Always on demand by subscribing at Apple or Spotify. If you're watching us live, as you should, every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. On Fox News Facebook or YouTube, just drop down in the text description underneath this live stream. You'll see a button to subscribe to the Will Cain Show, or click on over to us, the Will Cain Show on Facebook, and subscribe on those channels, and that way you'll be with us. You'll be a member of the Willisha. Just an observation this morning as I'm doom scrolling through the world. I keep running into these panels on CNN. I keep running into these roundtables. It's some show. I have no idea what time it is, and it's always hosted by the same condescending host. And it is inevitably a 3-on-1, 4-on-1, 5-on-1 situation. 4 liberals, 1 conservative. The conservative is almost always former Congressman Scott Jennings of Kentucky. Jennings does an absolutely incredible job. Now, I come at this with some level, certainly of experience. I'd like to think of some expertise. Throughout my career, I would say this is the most common scenario for me in the media, at least until the launch of the Will Cain Show in 2018 on ESPN, and then hosting Fox and Friends and the Will Cain Show on Fox. It was, for years, employed by CNN, and after that, employed by ESPN, where I was almost always surrounded in some panel by at least 3 people who disagreed. You know, when I was back at CNN, that was first me on this show called In the Arena with Elliot Spitzer and Kathleen Parker and, most inevitably some 1 or 2 other liberal pundits. That's really when I made my chops. That was the early days. It wasn't the minor leagues. It was my first call up to the majors. And from there, I was on Starting Point with Soledad O'Brien. Exact same scenario, just baked into the morning. Soledad O'Brien, the host, and a panel of 3. Again, I was almost always the only person of my point of view. Then I get over to First Take on ESPN. And although it's mano a mano, it's me versus Stephen A. Smith. It really wasn't. It was me versus Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman, and often the moderator. And that would change out from time to time. But I was just used to doing this, and I like it. And, I sympathize, but I also think it's an interesting position, for example, for Jessica Tarlov on the 5. I think it's a very interesting dance. It's actually, I think, somewhat easy to debate 4 people at once. It's not a compounding factor. It doesn't make it harder. It actually makes it easier. And we could go into the reasons why that might be. But one thing that is really hard to maintain in these scenarios is some sense of camaraderie, chemistry, not just ugliness. I watch these clips that often pop up. I never see it on television because, honestly, who watches CNN? But I see these scenarios with Scott Jennings, and he's really, really good at it. And I want to give him his flowers. But at the same time, just because, I don't know, just as I'm interested in this being done well, not just because I like television, but because I like the idea of people of differing viewpoints capable of speaking with one another, I have to also point out how poor everyone else involved in this scenario, in this show, on this panel, are. I mean, they're really bad. They don't belong anywhere beyond a Brooklyn brunch table surrounded by seething, angry, like-minded, nodding bots. No offense to it, A's Dan, and your Brooklyn brunch table. But they fail a basic barometer, and it comes down to, honestly, it's who you are. It's your personality. They are condescending. They are smirky. They are smarmy. they're dismissive to him. And I could do a lot in a debate. Max, Stephen A., we debated hard. I mean, we led because it's the nature of the show on First Take with going, that is insane what you just said, and let me tell you why. It's like lead with the punch and then follow up with your combinations. We went hard, and it got angry. It got angry at times, and everything on air was real. But you know what? It was rarely dismissive. Like, I think that's the ugliest. Like, if you're trading haymakers, that's fine. That's mutual combat. That's respect. But seething, smarmy, smirky dismissiveness is the ugliest of them all. And he is surrounded by that on CNN, a just constant stream of condescension. And more power to him. But, I mean, you know, from CNN to CBS, it's just shocking how, forget the talent on set, the total lack of vision, professionalism, and desire to win in the executive office. Like, how are you making your choices, and what is it you understand about good television? Because I would suggest after, 3-4 decades of declining ratings and failure, you might zig to the zag. You might change it up. You might try something new. Maybe America doesn't like a visual image where your brand has become looking down the nose at America. Just some observations from someone who sat in the seat on what comes across your stream when you see clips from CNN. We have a lunch break panel today. We're going to try to master that. We'll see how many varying degrees of disagreement we have today as we work through some of the biggest stories here today on The Will Cain Show. Let's get to it with story number 1. Stacy Washington is the host of Sirius XM Patriot Show, Stacy on the Right. You should check it out. It's every weekday night at 9 o'clock until midnight. She's also, by the way, a U.S. Air Force veteran. And Vince August is a comedian, former judge. And you can check him out on X and YouTube at Vince August 21. How you guys doing? Glad to have you today on the Will Cain Show.
Well, I'm going to get a little comfortable. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to take my hoodie off a little bit because we're having a good day in Boston. I don't know what you guys are hanging in Dallas. Probably a sign that says Mark Cuban will work for any administration, but we're hanging a banner.
Those of you listening on radio or on podcast, Vince has unveiled, it looks like, his hoodie to reveal a green Boston Celtics shirt. It's a special kind of trash talk. It's one that calls back several months to the championship of Boston over Dallas in the NBA Finals. It's a new season officially starting off today in the NBA. So, look, Vince, we're full of hope today. Hey, speaking of Mark Cuban, I'm curious what you both think about this. Wasn't on the list of topics I sent you, but I just followed my curiosity where it goes. And you bringing this up, Vince, I think is kind of interesting. What's going on with Mark Cuban? Mark Cuban is actually pretty fascinating. You know, at one point in my life, I'll start with you, Stacey. Like Mark was, I would have considered him, and I think many people would have considered him a thinker. I've interacted with Mark a little bit, and he'll interact with you in goodwill if you email him, and you kind of have a back and forth. But you know, I remember Mark when he first bought the Dallas Mavericks. I think I read somewhere that he was inspired by Ayn Rand, that he'd read Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead. He would have probably called himself a libertarian. I don't know if he ever would have said conservative. But he has now become like typical Democrat. And when I say that, I mean it in the most partisan terms, like Democrat. He's all in. Like, I've never seen anyone push their chips more to the middle of the table for Kamala Harris. And it's just odd, Stacey. And I think people going, does he have some vested interest in the outcome? I think it's actually a worthy question because it just doesn't add up. I don't know if it's animus and hatred of Trump or he gets something out of the election of Kamala Harris. But how do you explain Mark Cuban, Stacey?
Well, I'll tell you, I one time hit him on the fact that he has private security, yet he's for gun control. And he responded to me, and I was so flabbergasted that I kind of walked back a step or two. You know, obviously he is wealthy and rich and famous and he needs private security, but most Americans can't afford that. So that's my, one time where he noticed that I was alive. But I think he sees himself in the same vein as Elon Musk, where Elon Musk has purchased Twitter. and he's transformed it, and he's become quite famous for it, even though he's the richest man on the planet. For the other companies that are wildly successful, Mark Cuban also has numerous companies that he has shepherded. He's on Shark Tank. He's very much an entrepreneur, and he's very much into the American spirit of capitalism and the free market. And I think he sees himself as being just as influential as Elon Musk, but he's not having the same result. And I see a lot of frustration in him on CNBC. I watch all of his clips because I don't understand how he can advocate for such tough business principles on Shark Tank and help people take businesses that are on the cusp and grow them into these huge entities, and support Kamala Harris, who is anti-business, anti-free markets, and especially she's anti-America, Will. So I would say that there's a bit of a, it's like a crisis of confidence. It almost seems like he's going through a midlife crisis for a business guy, and he's picked the wrong horse. He can't back off of it now. And there's also a cultural component because he's an elite who needs to be a Democrat in order to maintain everything that he's built.
Well, okay, Vince, let me jump. I want to actually bring the NBA back into this because I think that cultural component actually played a role as well. He no longer owns the Dallas Mavericks, but he did for a while. And he was there through 2020 and, after the George Floyd riots and the inclusion of DEI. And actually, we should even back up the clock a little bit before that because the Mavs were the center of it was like a sexual harassment, the environment of the Dallas Mavericks was accused of being very toxic when it came to gender politics. And so he was already sort of in the crosshairs. And then 2020 happens and he goes full on DEI, like Black Lives Matter. He goes all the way, right? And you could say at the time, like, you're an NBA owner, you've got, your players who think a certain way. It's in your best interest to be in line with the players and the way the league is moving. But he kind of, from that point, to Stacy's point, has just kept going. He hasn't stopped. I think Stacy's right. I actually think there's a lot of personality in here where he's like, he clearly is, at some point, he got sideways or burned by Trump. And then I think that what Stacy's saying about Musk is interesting. I would imagine there's a little bit of envy in like who Musk has become and Cuban has not managed to become in America.
I think he's a bored billionaire. I think he's a bored billionaire that, look, when you have celebrity because he does work on Shark Tank, the one thing I've noticed about, and I don't know how much of it is cancel culture or whatever, but the left will eat their own before the right eat their own. So I think if you're going to pick a side, it seems now you have to go all in on the left, whereas on the right, you do have some room to play. I don't feel like you have to agree with everything that conservatives agree with, and you will get leeway. Whereas on the left, I think you have to buy into everything. Otherwise, immediately you get attacked. So I think he picked his side because, again, he does lean more Hollywood. He does lean more media, and he's got to lay into it because look, I met him for 5 minutes, and I can't judge somebody from a 5-minute meeting, but I did watch his exchange with Vivek. And it's like, all right, see, that's the reasonable version of Mark Cuban. So I think a lot of what he does on X is troll people. I think he's, again, a bored billionaire, because if you're a billionaire and you're on X and you're having these exchanges, you're clearly bored. And I think that's where he is. And, there comes a point in time where I ask people on both sides, can you really agree with everybody on your side all the time? It doesn't make sense. I find it to be impossible. So I think people just lean into it because they have no choice.
I want to think about that. Okay, I'm thinking about that as you say it. So I'll go back to you, Vince, and then Stacy, you just jump in right after. I was on CNN in 2011. This was the advent of the Tea Party, the rise of the Tea Party. And one of the conversations had at the time was all about litmus tests, like, were you pure enough? And that was the way that a lot of Tea Party candidates, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, whatever, ousted longtime Republicans. And then at that time, it was like, well, you have to be all or nothing when it comes to conservatism and republicanism. So, many on the left would point out, I think they would debate you on what you just said, Vince, and go, well, you have to be all Trump or nothing. But I don't know. I wouldn't make that argument to you because guys like Elon Musk are certainly not all or nothing, as you just described. I don't think Elon would satisfy a litmus test for Republicans. He just wouldn't. Like, if we really bore down and got him down on all the issues, he wouldn't. And there's a lot of guys like him. I mean, I don't know what way Joe Rogan's going to vote. But, you know, all these guys that are sort of in that vein, the Weinsteins, you know,
RFK Jr.
Eric and Brett.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm
Tulsi
talking about Eric and Brett. Yeah. Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., great points by both of you. They are certainly not, they don't illustrate that desire on the right that you have to check every box. Here's my question, first Vince, then Stacy. Does that exist on the left? I'm just trying to think right now. I mean, Liz Cheney, I saw this morning that Liz Cheney was criticizing, I believe, the revocation of Roe v. Wade. And she, for all of her years of politics as a Republican, was like super pro-life. And now that she has endorsed Kamala Harris, she's like sliding all the way towards adopting all of the positions, to your point, Vince. So I'm trying to think who on the left is the version of all these people we just named, RFK, Jr., Musk. I just don't know. I can't off the top of my head identify that vein of the left.
I don't know. I am, you know, it's funny that you brought up Liz Cheney, because one of the people that, you know, I interact with that I know is calling that part of it out is Jon Stewart. So Jon Stewart's like, really? We're leaning into the Cheneys? So there are people obviously out there. I'm not going to paint with a broad brush and say there aren't. But from what I've seen in the news media, I don't think there is any leeway in the news media. I think you're all in. And I think what's happening with these Republicans that do back Kamala Harris, I said, what you're seeing there is this is the way to get to forgiveness. This is the way to wipe out and abolish, you know. So the way I can erase being a war criminal, Dick Cheney, is Orange Man bad. George Bush, Orange Man bad. So it's almost like it's the confession. You know, you go into the confession for the Catholics out there, you know, saying an Our Father, Hail Mary. This one is just say Donald Trump is bad and all sins are forgiven. So that's what I'm seeing, at least with those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I gotta say, I don't see a lot over there. Every person that comes to mind, as soon as I think of them, they've already moved to the left, because their sacrament is, like you said, you have to get on your knees and take the Dorito into your mouth. And after you swallow it, you have to say existential threat to democracy, not a republic.
Yes.
The Constitution guarantees our states say Republican form of government, but they have to take the Dorito and swallow it and then say Donald Trump is Hitler, and then they're in. I think of the people who were more moderate. Think of some of the people that we had on, like The View. The View used to be a round table with a bunch of different viewpoints on it. Now they're all hardcore left. Even the women who were Republicans, actual Republicans. And Alyssa Farrar Griffith is the one who, she exemplifies to me that Joe Scarborough transition. He was in Congress as a Republican. He's now a hardcore lib, but his little, you know, parentheses after his name is R.
Yeah.
They don't have room. Think of the 25 million pro-life Americans who used to be a part of the Democrat Party until Nancy Pelosi said, we don't have room over here for the pro-life viewpoint. You have to support Roe v. Wade, or you're not really a Democrat. I don't believe those 25 million Democrats left their party. I think they just basically swallowed the Dorito and left their pro-life beliefs behind because they want to be against racism. So they don't have that variety. The person I think of when you guys are talking about this, Will, I think of Nikki Haley. She's doing a special on Sirius XM every Wednesday, and she's talking about politics and kind of rehabilitating herself for Republicans, because at the end of the day, she did not like Donald Trump. She worked for him, but did not like him. She ran against him when she said she wouldn't. And now she needs to rehabilitate herself because she's working for a smaller think tank, and she's obviously wealthy. She doesn't have to work, but she still wants to contribute and have a voice. And that requires rehabilitation after jousting with Donald Trump. So we have a little bit of that silo, but you do not have to like Donald Trump to be a Republican and have respect and have your voice heard. Right. It's not the same on the left.
Hey, Bill Maher.
Let's carry on this conversation.
Every now and then.
That's a good one. That's a good one, Vince. Bill Maher.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is, let's carry on this conversation about Elon Musk. This is from a New York Times writer on X. He says, Musk is simultaneously in fights with the FAA, the DOJ, the FCC, the FTC, Department of Interior, EEOC, National Labor Relations Board, EPA, etc. And now Musk has nudged Trump to put him in charge of an effort to curb government rules. Why is Musk working so hard to get Trump elected? A look at his conflicts. They then wrote an article suggesting that he has a vested interest in the election of Donald Trump. What I found fascinating about this was the number of government agencies going after Elon Musk. And Stacey, you brought up that you have to take the chip and call Donald Trump Hitler. But now, like a German politician has called Musk Hitler. Musk has now become public enemy number 2. I think he said in a conversation with Tucker Carlson, like, I really need Donald Trump to win because I've put myself out there to such a degree that I am going to be in the crosshairs if Donald Trump loses. I think he's right. I think he'll be in the crosshairs regardless of the election outcome because all these agencies are run by people that would want to come after Elon Musk. Here's my question for you two. I think this is undoubtedly true. Elon Musk is public enemy number 2. Donald Trump, public enemy 1. Stacy, who's public enemy number 3? Gets kind of interesting if you think about it after Donald Trump and Elon Musk. I think I have an answer. I'm curious who yours would be about public enemy number 3.
I'd say it's everyday Americans who take part in activism. I think of Bevelyn Beatty, who just went to prison a couple of days ago for 3.5 years for blocking the entrance to a Planned Parenthood. The grandma who went to jail for 5 years. The young woman, she's 24. I can't remember her name. She's in jail. A bunch of pro-lifers going to jail for the FACE Act. And I think they're just the beginning. If you look at J6, they were successfully able to imprison those people. Some of them, they were vandals, they were rioters. They could have gone to jail for something. But in America, you don't even go to jail if you rape somebody. So let's be real here. You shouldn't be going to jail for that. So they've progressed past the political, just purely political, to the FACE Act. And the next people on the list are business owners like Musk. And after him, it's people who speak out in inconvenient ways that are material. So not someone with a small podcast, but someone who would block an entrance to a clinic and set an example for someone else to really break their sacrament, which is abortion.
Vince?
I think it's the person with the biggest platform that speaks for that side. So it would have been Tucker up until he left Fox. So, I mean, what's the next big voice? Is it Gutfeld? I mean, he's got a big audience. It's certainly not Kilmeade. He's got no chance at all at being anywhere near this list. Take Kilmeade out. Take Jesse Waters out until we know if the hair is real. Look, all joking aside, I think it's got to be whoever has that platform. I think Rogan is still up there. And I think it's anybody that whoever steps into that following. So we just saw Trump appeared on Flagrant, and they immediately went after that comedian.
Andrew Schultz.
Jimmy Dore's got a following, so they go after him. I think it's whoever is the loudest voice advocating for that side.
So I agree with you. I respect your answer, Stacy, but this is where my mind went, and went in the same way as Vince's, but I will lay out for you that I think it takes a certain recipe of ingredients to make you a public enemy. And that recipe of ingredients requires that you're somehow dangerous. Now, danger is interesting. How are you dangerous? I don't mean, obviously, real danger. What I mean is a danger to the agenda. And anyone that speaks to the choir, in essence, is not a danger, right? So what I mean is if your audience, and Stacy, I don't know your audience, but you're on Sirius XM Patriot, so it's presumable that much of your audience listening is conservative. So you wouldn't be a and that would mean that you wouldn't be a danger to them. A danger is someone that's breaking into their bubble and saying things that you're not supposed to say. Do you know what I mean? And so this is why Musk is such a danger.
And that would be like the Call Your Daddy podcast chick. If she ever decided to be pro-Trump, she would be public enemy number 1. I'm not talking about
and that would bring in.
I'm talking about big people.
And Stacy, I hear you, but I'll tell you, Stacy, what would that bring in my second ingredient to the recipe? Betrayal. So what would happen if Call Her Daddy did that? It wouldn't just be dangerous; it would be a sense of betrayal, and that's how you get to public enemy number 3. And so the best answer I can give is Joe Rogan on that. He satisfies a big audience, reaching these other people that aren't necessarily inside the choir. And there's a sense of betrayal to them that he should have been. By the way, Bill Maher will get there, but he's managed to toe the line, Vince, where he hasn't completely gone, full betrayal. But I saw, real quick, Stacey, I saw Joe Rogan went on the sidelines of the University of Texas, Georgia game this weekend, and I saw some outrage in sports media circles. How could this institution of higher learning embrace this guy on the sidelines of a football game. That's the kind of thing they see as dangerous, and that's why I would nominate him as public enemy number 3. Stacy, you were saying?
I was just saying, so let's stick with Joe Rogan for a second there. So yes, 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 but also no, because he literally just a few weeks ago was saying he would rather vote for RFK Jr. and he didn't want to see RFK kind of, joining the Trump train. So he was still delineating himself. He doesn't really love Trump, and he hasn't had Trump on the show. This far into the election cycle, I thought he would have already hit Joe Rogan, if not for the full 3 hours, just for 20 minutes and 40 minutes or so. He hasn't had Trump on yet. I've heard it's in the works. I do agree with you. They're looking for people who literally speak to millions of people who are respected and considered mainstream. They're not Trumpers. They're not Tea Partiers. They're not on the right. They're not, religious. They're not pro-lifers. And those people have respect and they have a voice and they don't want to see the betrayal. The betrayal of Trump is the biggest one they've ever experienced. And they're trying to teach everyone else they should never do that.
That's forgotten at this point. That's part of the recipe of the hatred for Trump. He was, I don't know if he was one of them, but he lived in their world. And that world included not just New York City and business. It was appearing on The Tonight Show. It was going on WWE. He was everywhere and accepted as a mainstream celebrity. And his betrayal of that is part of the hatred, Vince.
Yeah,
absolutely. He absolutely was one of them. He was on Oprah Winfrey constantly. He had a contract with NBC. He was in, I think, movies. Whether it was a Home Alone, one of the movies. He was absolutely in that circle. He was hanging out with the Clintons, and I think, look, to me, the hatred for him is about one thing, and I could be wrong. I just think they were so positive that Hillary Clinton was going to be president and she lost to him. And rather than accept the responsibility of her being a bad candidate, they blamed him. And he was the thing that they could hang that blame on. And for whatever reason, it made them crazy.
Okay. So I'll just say, Hillary Clinton, so I actually thought she was the worst candidate we've ever had. And now that Kamala's on the scene, I understand that she really wasn't. Her unfavorables were so extreme. People hated her, and everybody had their own good reason. They hated her because she was Bill Clinton's wife. She was the first lady and she never shut up. She wanted to do healthcare as a first lady. If you talk to people, they have as many reasons for hating her as I do for collecting boots. They just can't stand her. But Hillary Clinton could get any person and talk, right? If you ask Hillary Clinton, why do you think we should pull out of Afghanistan? She could sit there for 20 minutes and give you the receipts as to what we spent, why we should, why we shouldn't, what she thought about it when she was the first lady, secretary of state, whatever. Kamala can't do that. And so she has demonstrated that the Democrats actually did miss their big opportunity, their first female president. It could have been Hillary. She would have destroyed our economy, but she was their best offering. And now they have Kamala, who is a joke, and they really hate Trump all the more. Any reason they hated him, it's exponentially exploded.
Kamala's a joke, and Hillary Clinton was serious. But I would argue, and you agreed with this, Stacey, and what you had to say, Hillary Clinton was so historically unlikable that it didn't matter how competent or serious that she was. And say what you will about Kamala, I don't think she's as unlikable as Hillary Clinton. So I don't know what I don't know how we tally that up on who's the worst candidate.
But that was intentional, Will. Come on. She goes in under Biden. She had eviscerated him on that debate stage. She called him a racist. She called him everything but a child of God. Everybody thought it was her best moment ever. She gets in there and then she starts laughing. And this is an effort to basically sanitize herself from this idea that she's, she's everybody's hoe, right? She was the mistress to Willie Brown. She dated Montel Williams. She's got this whole Hollywood dating scene thing she's got to overcome. She can't be Hillary. So she laughs a lot. She makes word salads, and she makes everybody like her by dancing at every event she appeared at. She's doing a jig if there's music going on. That was effective because people see her as being an attractive, younger Democrat who also has credentials. It worked for her. She didn't want to be Hillary.
And she's just more unknown. And that plays into her likability. Like, Hillary was a known quantity. And we can never underestimate, name recognition, understanding. No one's as famous as they think they are, even when you're running for president. So, you You ask the average person on the street, who is Kamala Harris? And honestly, not many people will know the answer to that. They'll know she's running for president, but they won't be able to tell you much about her. And they've leaned into that by design because they want to keep her. They want to keep this as a referendum on Donald Trump for the third, fourth time in American history. They don't want it to be about Kamala. All right, I got a couple more things I want to hit with you guys. Let's go lighter, I think, for one moment. This is a big part of my life. American Airlines is testing a new boarding process. And they're trying to tackle the problem. I've never heard it called this, and I'm on an airplane every week. Gate lice. The idea is all these people that gather around the boarding process and go when it's not their turn. So it looks like what they're going to do is when you go up, if it's not your boarding group and they scan your pass, it makes a loud noise and you're booted from the line. And I guess the argument would be like the embarrassment factor is going to fix this. First of all, the flight attendants don't do it. They don't correct it. And I don't know why that is. Maybe that's like a policy, like let's not have confrontations. Let's not make this a big deal. Let's just keep it moving. But I like this. I want red lights flashing. I want a big loud noise. If you want to tase them, that's okay with me. Get in your group. I love this, American. What do you think, Vince?
First of all, you're dealing with Americans and we have no shame. Have you been to Walmart? There is nothing that will shame people getting onto a plane. First of all, that process that you just described of buzzing lights and shaming people, that is the entire duration of a Spirit airline flight. Okay. So this is not going to work because it's nothing but mayhem for the most part in this country. I don't understand.
You think we can't be embarrassed?
What's that?
You think we just can't be embarrassed? We're beyond embarrassment in America?
No, we can't be embarrassed. We're Americans. Look at what we do all over the place. We can't be embarrassed. We embarrass America on a daily basis everywhere in the world. It's what we do. With the exception of breakdancing in the Olympics, we own the gold medal of embarrassing ourselves overseas and everywhere we go. Look, to me, the boarding process is really simple. And I don't know why we have it backwards. If you're in the back of the plane, you get on first. No carry-on bag. You're boarding group 5, you're in the back rows, you get on first. Then the next section of the back of the plane goes on. Sorry, no bags for you either. Then you move further up the plane, and the further up the plane you move, that's who gets their carry-on bag. Boom. End of story. Why are we starting with miles plus, military, who played high school lacrosse? I mean, who's got a kid? Who's got a support animal? Come on, man.
Don't forget the wheelchairs.
Number, baby.
Yeah. And the support horse.
Don't forget the parade of wheelchairs.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to jump in here because I am a very tall person and I have looked into this. In fact, I am probably your walking, talking compendium of useless and inane airline facts. And I don't fly as often as you will, but I do fly. And I just recently flew back, and we fly Southwest exclusively because we're no longer a hub because TWA went out of business. It's a long saga, but St. Louis International Airport really isn't international because we can't fly direct internationally anywhere. We have to fly to Atlanta or Chicago. So I looked it up.
Okay.
Boarding from the back, which sounds so much more logical than anything else you've ever heard. I thought that too, but it actually takes longer to board from the back to the front of the plane. They've run tests on all of these scenarios, but they have not run the test that you just described because they never ran one where the 2 first boarding groups at the back didn't have bags. But as long as people have carry-on luggage, it takes longer to board from the back to the front than it does the other iterations. So they're basically using a hybrid of the fastest way to do it. Will, I think there's some people who can still be embarrassed. All Americans are not as hardcore, but there are enough of them who are gate lice, right? Some of the gate lice are gate lice because they can't be embarrassed. And on Southwest, they do actually call you out. If you are in B and you show up in A, she will say, "Oh, we're not boarding your group yet." And she'll go to the next person. So you literally get sidelined. But not all of the airlines do that. I have to say, I thought it was funny. I think flashing lights would actually embarrass people into not doing that again. Some people are going to act a fool because they are fools, and they're going to go out and they're going to try it and they're going to make it happen as often as they can. I just think I'm so tired of everybody being.
They play dumb. By the way, Stacy, that's the technique. I fly every week. I know what they do. They play dumb. They're like, I don't know which group. What group are we? What'd they call?
Right. I love that. Yeah. And I think that's actually really high class. Playing dumb is high class instead of being a total a-hole. So they could solve this. Does everybody want to know how they solve these issues? Instead of giving everybody the opportunity to pay an extra $500 to be special, just make the plane seats and rows the sizes they were 15 years ago. And then people will stop having to pay extra for leg room. People will stop fighting each other because they're so annoyed that they have to sit shoulder to shoulder with a stranger with their legs pressed together, their knees touching the seat in front of them. If you just give a little bit more room so we can be civilized again, a lot of the altercations that you're seeing would cease. And I'm willing to bet like hard cash on that. I am.
So here's a little bit of travel info as well. United's trying something new. They're trying boarding group 1 is the window, and then the next highest one is the middle, and then the aisle goes last. So they're trying to get you in, so there's not all this, excuse me, sir, that's my seat, and everybody has to get up and do that whole thing. But if we're getting to the heart of the issue, it is about the bag. There's no point in getting on the plane early. And people that don't fly a lot say that. Oh, why do you want to get on the plane early? You're going to be on there for 3 hours. The reason you want to get on the plane earlier so you don't have to gate check your bag, because that is a huge downbeat. That is a bummer. Now I have to wait for my bag. You want to be able to get overhead space. Now, we need to also crack down on that because people... My purse doesn't count. This sack of food I brought doesn't count. This whole, one bag in a carry-on has turned into 4 bags and 3 of them don't count in people's minds.
And a blanket.
So we got to crack.
A pillow. I mean,
Yes, exactly.
And you're shopping, your electronics.
That's where this, and that's how we're losing the storage space. And that's why everybody's fighting to get on first so they get some storage space. It's not about the seats. And the only one, to your point, Stacy, the only one that matters for is Southwest, and they're doing away with it. Board first, pick your seat.
Yeah, but
they're doing away with it.
Why they're doing away with it? Because we just talked to a guy on our last flight. He said that they actually are not doing away with it because their customers want it. During COVID, they had people fighting them. There were people literally taking the stewardesses down to the ground, and so they would try to file a complaint against that person, and they couldn't match the person to their seat to verify their identity. People would give the wrong name. My name is this. Yeah, they leave their identification on the plane so that they couldn't be identified, and at the end, they'd have to let them go. So now with seat matching, they'll be able to discourage people from literally beating their flight attendants into a pulp if we should ever have masks or some kind of a pandemic again.
All right, let's do this one last really quick. I'll go to you, Vince. So this is a nobody, and I'm always hesitant to do this with somebody that posts on X, but I do think it's apropos today. I won't even say the girl's name, but a lady on X laments that this man on the subway was repeatedly harassing a woman, being disgusting, invading her space, telling me effing why me and other women around me tried to intervene and tell him off. But all the young, fit guys around just stood silent and looked at the ground. She then says, "This is why I have zero respect for men, absolute cowards with no backbones or sense of justice, who can see an objectively bad situation and can't do the bare minimum of at least telling someone to knock it off." Okay, kind of valid points at this point, I think. But now let's put it in context. This week is the week that Daniel Penny goes on trial in New York for manslaughter for stepping in to a situation worse than what she describes. And Jordan Neely is killed on the subway, and Daniel Penny is facing prosecution by DA Alvin Bragg in New York for manslaughter. Somebody went back and looked at this young lady's old post on X, and she said the following: "I would also like to add that it feels hollow and selfish at best and nefarious and exploitative at worst to only be bringing up violence against women at the expense of other marginalized groups, especially following the murder of Jordan Neely, its propagandist." So she acknowledges what everyone's thinking. Wait a minute. You want men to step in, but men get prosecuted when they step in. And you somehow came up with this Kamala Harris word salad about marginalized groups to say, that doesn't matter. I still want you men to step in and do something. Maybe she needs to figure out the power, Vince, of incentive.
But not only that, then the second a man does step in, now you have to worry about, I don't need a man's help. I don't need you stepping in. I've got this. So look, and this doesn't go for men. It goes for everybody. Nobody knows when to step in anymore because of the backlash people get for stepping in. Because immediate becomes, I don't need your help. I got this. So when do you know when the person has it or doesn't have it? And then the other thing to do, I hate to say it sometimes, is, and people say, how can you just take out your phone and record it? No, the phone recording it is documenting it for the people you do have to get involved, which is cops, security, or whoever else, because the second you step into that situation, again, now you become part of the situation. And where it goes from there becomes dangerous. Listen, I'm going to bring in another element to this that probably you're not expecting. But as somebody who has a carry permit, I've got to be super careful if I'm out and I am carrying on that day, because now I'm introducing a gun to the situation. So there's a lot of things you can't just sit there and say, well, why isn't everyone jumping in? No, everyone can't jump in because you don't know what everyone's situation surrounding you is at that moment.
Well, I have a concealed carry, and I have training on when to jump in, and it was especially important to update that training when we had the hands up, don't shoot. There was a lot of rioting and carjacking going on here in St. Louis, and I literally called over to my trainer and said, what do I do if I'm driving? And he told me it's still subjective, but if their hands are in the car and if my life is in danger.
Looks like we just lost Stacy and Vince. I don't know.
Sorry about that. 1 second.
That's
I don't know
the
what
end
happened.
of our
Who got to
scheduled
us?
Zoom session.
Who got
2
to
days?
us? Who canceled us?
China?
Yeah. Did they get to us? The heck just happened?
Did we just become public enemy number 3?
I really think we did. I think we did. Give me 1 second.
Well, we have technical difficulties with
back.
Vince and Stacy. We were coming to the end of the interview, so if you get them back, Dan, it's not going to be much more than to say goodbye and thank you, because we still have Chef Andrew Gruel coming up here on the Will Cain Show to talk about things like big food, RFK, and making America healthy again. But I also have a question about what it means to be old. Is Donald Trump old? Is Joe Biden elderly? What is middle-aged? I want to thank Stacy Washington and Vince August for being with us today here on the Will Cain Show. Sorry we had technical difficulties, but when we come back, what is old? Is it Joe Biden? What is elderly? Is it Donald Trump? That next on the Will Cain Show.
I'm Emily Campagno, and this is the Fox True Crime Podcast.
And I had nothing to do with her disappearance, but people still accuse me of it.
I sit down with the people who lived the nightmares.
I was in shock. I was just devastated.
The investigators who tirelessly worked on the case.
I feel for their families, and I really hope that they can catch this guy.
Bringing you closer to the story than you ever thought possible.
Listen and follow now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Will Howard and Ohio State take on Nebraska. The best pregame, the best announcers, the biggest games. Big noon Saturday, noon Eastern on Fox.
We're bringing the thunder to football. Fox Weather is storming the field with the risk of weather impact on the hottest NFL games this season. Listen to Storming the Field every Friday on foxnewspodcasts.com.
It is time to take the quiz.
5 days a week, it's 5 questions in less than 5 minutes. We ask people on the streets of New York City to play along. Let's see how you do.
Including the pre-Super Bowl era, what NFL franchise has won the most NFL championships?
I'm going to say the Cowboys.
I guess I would say the Packers.
How'd you do? Exactly. These get tougher, so hang on.
Make sure you take the quiz every weekday at thequiz.fox. Thank you for taking the quiz.
I think we often talk about when AI becomes reality, but what about when AI is our memory? It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live on foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, and the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube. One of my sons said last night to me, hey, have you seen Donald Trump at the Pittsburgh Steelers game? I said, yeah, I saw him show up at the Steelers game. And he said, no, did you see what he posted on Instagram? And I had seen it. And it is an image of Donald Trump in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. He's jacked, absolutely jacked, wearing number 47. It is an AI-generated image. In response to that, Newsweek went on a Pulitzer Prize-seeking investigative report and posted their results when they said, Donald Trump has shared what is likely an AI-generated image on his Truth Social account showing him as a player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Incredible. Newsweek. Incredible work. I don't know how your investigation came back with what is likely an AI-generated image. I think for anyone who's scrolling across this understands that's not Donald Trump. That is most definitely artificial intelligence. That is Donald Trump, age 45, maybe age 40, after several rounds of steroids and as a professional football player. So yeah, I think it's likely an AI-generated image. This got me thinking about memory. It got me thinking about reality. And it got me thinking about artificial intelligence. And I made the argument to my son, and I brought it up to the producers here today on the Will Cain Show. Donald Trump is 78 years old, okay? He's in pretty good shape for a 78-year-old. He certainly can golf. Energy of a 20-year-old. And, but still, although I think he's lost a good amount of weight, still overweight, and still 78, wearing makeup and has an interesting hairdo. But I'm not sure that's what will be the image in our memory 20 years from now. I actually think some of this AI generation begins to form an image in our head that becomes reality. What I'm trying to say is I think history, just visually, for all the clownish insults and the way he's caricatured, I actually think in our memory, history will show him in a much more heroic and favorable light than we even realize at the moment. What I'm speaking about is less about Donald Trump and the power of AI, but that AI has to lean into an image that's already being created by people who feel a certain way about you. And then it got me wondering, how would you describe Donald Trump today? Old? I know he's 78. He's objectively old. Does he seem old? What is old? And I asked the guys on the show, I asked the militia, what is old? And everybody had a different answer. Somebody said 75. Somebody said 67. I said, well, what's the difference between old and elderly? Joe Biden isn't just old. Joe Biden is elderly, right? And what does that mean? I think that comes with a level of feebleness, incapability, both physical and mental. I don't know when you cross over the line from old to elderly, but I think that line, it's generally understood, probably includes some loss of capability, whereas old might, I don't know, be more about a number or how you physically look. Because I don't think we've seen anything really, as much as there's this ongoing, I think, propaganda war about is he unfit, is he unwell? He's not lost mental capability. And physically, if you can do what he's doing, and I'm not just talking about the golf course, but the number of campaign events, the number of hours awake, you're not talking about any loss of capability. So then you got, what is middle-aged? Is that half your life? So if the average lifespan right now is 75, are you middle-aged when you're 37? 2 days, are you middle-aged? Do you think of yourself as middle-aged? You're 37,
Yeah, technically
right?
I am middle-aged. I'm 37, so that's...
Yeah, but do you think of yourself as middle-aged?
I do now because I thought of it the other day. So, yeah.
But do you think other people look at you? Do you think what is your perception of yourself? Do you walk around going, those people see a middle-aged man?
No. I'm getting a little bit gray, but I think they still see someone in their mid-30s.
See, self-image is pretty interesting. I've come to accept that I'm a middle-aged man. And you could argue I'm past middle-aged. What is that? So, my self-conception, I no longer walk around thinking I'm young. You know what I mean? Here, James is young. James is objectively young. James, what is middle-aged? You're 25, right? You're 25, James?
Mm-hmm.
What is middle-aged?
I think it's somewhere in the 50s and somewhere at the point of maybe a little gray hair, kind of slowing down, doesn't look like they could maybe swim 3 miles and do 300 push-ups. So as long as you could do the Navy SEAL swim, I don't think you're middle-aged.
So anybody else is just middle-aged?
That was a real suck-up job there. That was clear.
Not gratuitous. No gratuitous
In the beginning, I was like, wow, he thinks 50s is middle-aged? That's definitely not true. But then I realized he was describing me, at which point I want to say, I'm not 50, man, not yet.
I know you're not. I know the birthday.
Of course you do.
No, but for real, what is middle-aged? What is middle-aged? When do you think you're not? You're young, James. I think 25 is still objectively young. When do you think you cross over into middle-aged?
It depends on the person. Like, would you consider Tom Brady middle-aged, the way he's aging? I don't know. Maybe he's just starting to get there. I stand by my original answer.
Like Brady's what is Brady, 45?
Yeah.
And that's about as good as you could possibly be at 45. Like he is everything money can buy, every effort expended. That's as young as you can be at 45. And I would still say he's 45. He's middle-aged. I don't know. I think self-conception is interesting. And I think asking ourselves what is old has changed. And I think people that used to be a certain age we thought was old. I mean, hell, Wilford Brimley was my age when he was younger than me when he was in Cocoon. I think he was my age when he was the manager in The Natural. Wilford Brimley. So I do think our conception of what is middle-aged, what is old, and what is elderly has changed. And I think that Joe Biden is objectively elderly. I think Donald Trump is old. And what I'm telling you is I think that history will look back on this image of Donald Trump and this moment in time and the person that he is. And I think it will be influenced by the role of artificial intelligence in the imagery in our head. And it's going to change our memory of exactly how he looked and what he was. And how about this? He won't be thought of as an old president. All right. I don't know how he's pulling it off because he doesn't eat healthy. How important is it for the rest of us to eat healthy? Chef Andrew Gruel is going to join us on the role of big food and making America healthy again. Next on The Will Cain Show.
It is time to take the quiz.
5 days a week, it's 5 questions in less than 5 minutes. We ask people on the streets of New York City to play along. Let's see how you do.
Including the pre-Super Bowl era, what NFL franchise has won the most NFL championships?
I'm going to say the Cowboys.
Good guess. I would say the Packers.
How'd you do exactly? These get tougher, so hang on.
Make sure you take the quiz every weekday at thequiz.fox. Thank you for taking the quiz.
Streaming now on Fox Nation, God, Family, Football.
As a head football coach, my job is to teach these boys to worship is what it means to win.
A new series that follows a small-town football team.
My little brother was diagnosed with leukemia. It just pushes me to be stronger.
With a big-time heart.
I always do trust in God.
Go inside their lives and follow their faith.
Everybody needs help tackling life.
God, Family, Football. A new series streaming now. Part of Fox Faith on Fox Nation. Sign up at foxnation.com.
I'm Dana Perino, co-host of The Five and co-anchor of America's Newsroom. Join me for my podcast, Perino on Politics. Listeners of Everything Will Be Okay will gravitate toward this podcast too. Every Monday, I'm going to talk to people I trust in politics as they tell me what they're seeing and thinking in the 2024 election cycle. As they prep me to cover the upcoming election, they'll prep you, the voters, too. Make sure you subscribe to this series on foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts and leave a rating and review.
170 grams of protein, under 2,200 calories. That's what I'm trying to do. Is that going to make America healthy again? It's the Will Cain Show. Stream live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, on the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube. Chef Andrew Gruel is a celebrity chef. He's the founder of Slapfish. He's also the author of a book, The Family Cookbook, and he joins us now. What's up, Chef?
Hey, how you doing?
How am I doing? You tell me how I'm doing. That's exactly what I want to ask you. All right, I'm trying to do, this is my recipe, okay? And I've been on it for 3 months, although I've started to slide recently because vanity is a hell of a motivator, and I don't have any moments where I have to have my shirt off on television in the near future. So without that, I've slipped. But in an effort to be, yes, healthy, but also satisfy my vanity, I weigh 170, 175. I'm trying to get 170 grams of protein every day, and I did pick this number randomly. I'm trying to stay under 2,200 calories. So how am I doing?
You're doing well. You're doing well. Hey, you know what? I don't think that falls into any red zones when it comes to concern. I think it's a matter of, are you happy with what you're eating?
Well, here's what's interesting about this, and this is what we want to talk about a little bit, like big food and these types of things with you today and making America healthy. This whole, I haven't been an idiot for most of my life on food. And eating healthy kind of meant, okay, I'm not going to, because I love a chicken fried steak and I love fried chicken. I'm not going to eat the fried food and I'm going to pass on dessert. It really wasn't about what I am eating. It's what I'm not eating, right? That's what healthy meant to me. On this, Chef, like, in the end, it's all about calories. Like, if you want to boil it down, the most simple thing in the world, like is don't take in more calories than you burn. That's the main thing in my mind. The protein side of the equation is that, well, okay, but I've got to get in a certain amount of protein, which requires me to eat a certain way. And I like it. Like, it's a lot of meat. It's a lot of meat throughout the day. And I don't get hungry all the time because of that. I can eat fewer times, bigger like portions of meat, and still stay low on calories.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that people don't necessarily consider, right? Because you're right, it is calorie in, calorie out. It's that simple. But one of the things that people don't think about is also like what we're eating and what we're putting in our bodies, and the result that has on kind of the biodynamic nature of our bodies, right? So you've probably heard a lot recently about seed oils, for example, and all these other chemicals that are in our food. Well, a lot of those things that we're eating that are, I call them hidden killers, right? Because they're wreaking havoc in our bodies. Take sugar. We talk about sugar and how bad sugar is for you. Well, sugar is a calorie. When you eat a ton of seed oils and your omega-6s are really high, you have this exacerbated inflammation in your body. And then that actually kind of feeds that sugar. It oxidizes and it feeds the sugar. And then it continues to cause problems in your body like prediabetes, obesity, and hypertension. I mean, we could go down the list of what we consider chronic diseases in America, or I used to call the Western diet, because we don't see these issues in diets of places like Japan and a lot of Eastern countries because of the fact that they eat so much seafood, but most importantly, healthy fats, right? So when you think about it, fat is good. We want fat in our body, but we want the right types of fats.
So why, seed oils has become public enemy number one recently. People pointed to seed oil. Help me reconcile this. I used to. I don't eat as much anymore because I figured out they're not that high in protein and they're really high in calories, but I love nuts. So like almonds, but I like peanuts. I like all nuts. And even sunflower seeds, which I think is the source of most seed oil, they're like, at least as I always understood it, pretty good for you. Why, when I take something that theoretically is good for me, all these different nuts, and I reduce it into seed oil, does it become public enemy number one?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's kind of intellectually what a lot of people are thinking about, but it's the processing. And, we go back to the ultra processing. It's the fact that the heat and you're oxidizing it and you're commercially processing it like you would car oil or engine lubricant. When you eat it in its cold, raw form, it doesn't wreak havoc on your body because it hasn't necessarily oxidized. Almost think of it as a transition. When you cook anything, it goes from kind of raw product into messy cooked product or beautiful cooked product. And the same applies to our oils and our fats, especially. So let's use, for example, oils that we use when we fry. Those are sitting in a fryer, right? A fryolator for days. Some restaurants keep them in their fryer for like over a week. And as they're sitting there, they're at 375 degrees. I mean, it is breaking down. That is a chemical reaction that's taking it from what originally was kind of a cold, raw fat that did have some healthy elements to it, right? Sunflower seeds, almonds. I'm a nut guy too, so I totally understand. And you're taking all the healthy elements, you're completely cooking them out, and you're changing the chemical nature of that oil and then consuming it. And it's just high in, if we want to break it down, it's just a ton of omega-6 fatty acids. Now, omega-6 fatty acids, those are kind of the bad fats. Omega-3s are the good fats. You need some omega-6s. But about 150 years ago, our ratio in our bodies of omega-3s, which you get from seafood and fish and some other plants, and then the omega-6s being the bad ones, the ratio used to be 1-to-1. The ratio in our diet now is like 20-to-1, 6-to-3. And that imbalance is what leads to the inflation, which causes all of the exacerbates, if you will, and creates all of these other problems. So eating the nuts is not bad. You got a lot of fiber in there.
It's just right. Oh, okay. A couple quick specific questions then. I'm curious, what is your preferred oil for cooking that you use? I mean, olive, avocado. Most people don't like vegetable oil anymore, right? So what do you use? I mean, do you do something different to fry as well? So what is your oil of choice?
So we fry, and the thing is that taking a step back, generally we use too much fat when we cook in America. It's like, right, you've seen the videos of people just dousing a flat top at a restaurant with fat or oil. And typically the nature when you cook and you think your food's going to stick is you just add more oil. So kind of this notion of shallow frying. Well, first and foremost, I try and use small amounts of oil because all you really need to do is lubricate the product in which you're cooking. So that's number one. Number two, I do pick my fat per the product. So for deep frying, I typically use beef tallow. Duck fat is a good one, or ghee, which is clarified butter. It's butter without the milk solids. When I'm sauteing like vegetables, I might use an extra virgin olive oil or an avocado oil. It has a little bit of a higher smoke point, more neutral flavor. And I also use things like rendered bacon fat or pork fat, which would be lard or just bacon fat. I use that sparingly. It's got a very, very strong flavor. And then I'm trying to think some other oils I use. I'll use a lot, any meat, like rendered meat fat, I'll save, and I'll use a little bit of it when I cook. I actually don't use, I cook with a silicone brush. So I'll take a silicone brush and dip it in the fat. I'll let my cooking vessel get really hot, and then I'll brush the pan as if, you know, I'm like the Van Gogh of the culinary world. I'll brush the pan so you get that really thin layer on there, and you can use so much less, and it goes such a long way that if you break down the seed oil versus real fat debate strictly from a utilitarian perspective and not health, it's the way to go because you use a little bit to go longer and it's got a stronger flavor.
Isn't it fascinating? Like everything that we were told is bad, butter and fat turn out to be good, and the replacements are what's bad.
It's nuts. And I grew up in this world, in the restaurant world, you know, and I think the chef's perspective is very interesting because what we're being fed, right? When you look at that kind of supply chain, it goes from the processor, the manufacturer, and then down to the wholesaler, then to another wholesaler, and then maybe a third wholesaler, then down to the restaurant or the consumer. So we're up there in that supply chain. So we're kind of being fed a lot of these products in the marketing early on, and then the food marketing machine is pushing it up through the consumers. So early for me, I was like, oh, grapeseed oil is incredibly healthy, sunflower seed oil, safflower oil, soybean, vegetable oil. These are the heart healthy oils. And that's what we wanted to use. The idea of using fats from a chef's perspective who was trying to keep his consumers healthy, I was just, you know, I would never do that. And it wasn't until I started reading some research about 10 years ago when I started reading about omega-6s and omega-3s in regards to seafood, right? Because I run seafood restaurants. So I started looking at our seafood deficiency in our diet and all of these ailments that we have, and realized that if we just consume more healthy omega-3s, that we would actually be able to bring that imbalance down. And that was that aha moment where I thought, well, what about the seed oils? Because those are so high in omega-6s. So that was the angle through which I got to it.
Okay, last thing with you then. So, you know, it's interesting how it ties into the modern news cycle as well with Donald Trump just to McDonald's. I mean, I think that we as a society decided it's probably been 15 to 20 years that, you know, fast food's not good for you. And they're using a lot of these things in fast food, right, that we're talking about. But you talking about processed foods as well. Like if we were making changes to our diet around eating out, like I guess what I'm getting at is I intuitively know that in fast food, I'm getting some of the things that I don't want to be getting that we're talking about. If I go to a restaurant, am I getting, you know, I just heard you talk about what you guys are using, but are most restaurants using prepared food that use all that same processed oils or ingredients? And then the final step is my own kitchen, right? Making choices in my own kitchen about what I choose to use. Like, where do you think the biggest violator is for most Americans on going down the wrong path on these diets?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're not going to solve this overnight, right? So when you start telling people just cut it out of your diet, that's an absurd approach because then they're just going to throw it out the idea out the window and be like, well, I can't do this. This is impossible. So to answer your question, it is in your home kitchen, right? Like first and foremost, it is in your home kitchen. All of those dangerous kind of sneaky oils and fats and processed ingredients are making their way into your food through all the packaged products you buy and then all the oils that you use with and you cook with at home. And it's the packaging, right? Because you talk about the nuts. Do you even, like, I didn't even realize this, but nuts have seed oil in them, right? When you go and you buy any of those packaged nuts, you think you're being healthy. Those things are doused in seed oils and then roasted. But if we just actually And to your point about fast food, it's like, that's an indulgence. It's a luxury outing. Go for it, right? Have the Chick-fil-A with the kids at the birthday party, as you talked about a couple days ago. Have the McDonald's birthday party if you have to. You're so right. We wiped that from our psyche, or our calculus, if you will, thinking that we were getting healthier, but then we were just bringing it home. That's the funny thing. And we lost the kind of community of, like, actually the all-Americana McDonald's. And when we start at home, that's where we fix things, especially at a young age with kids, because millions of kids now are suffering from, like, pre-diabetes, diabetes, hypertension, all of these elements that we didn't experience when we were in the 80s.
Yeah. It's crazy how many kids are fat. And then all of a sudden the problems that you rattle off, well, that goes with just beyond the aesthetics of the obvious thing we can see what's happening in our lives in America. Okay, I could do this for much longer, and I hope that you and I do. I'd love to have more of this conversation in the future, Chef. But in the meantime, people can check out your book, The Family Cookbook, and go visit you at Slapfish. You're often on Fox, so tune in whenever he's around. It's Chef Andrew Gruel. Thank you so much, Chef.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, there he goes. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on The Will Cain Show. 12 o'clock Eastern Time, Fox News YouTube, Fox News Facebook. I'll see you same time, same place right here tomorrow.